He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
No mai whakarongo mai ki te aotai whenua. Welcome to Country Life. I'm Sally Round.
Great to have your company. Ko Justin Gregory tēnei. Today we chat with Richard Burke, head of the large vegetable grower Leader brand. 30 years on, he's stepping down.
I'm taking you to a vineyard in Northland, inspired by some rambling old vines found in a secret garden.
And later on, a farmer and son team are mixing tourism with sheep farming near the mouth of the Hurunui River.
But first, we'll look at what's been making headlines on the rural news desk this week. And we start with the potential of hundreds more job losses for the primary sector after Alliance Group proposed closing its Smithfield meat processing plant in Timaru. If the proposal's confirmed, sheep meat, calves and night shift venison processing would cease at the plant. The Meatworks is one of the biggest employers in the Timaru district and employs more than 600 staff during its peak season. Federated Farmers Meat and Wool Chair Toby Williams says it's gut-wrenching for the workers just months out from Christmas. He says with sheep numbers continuing to fall, he expects other meat companies to either cut production or jobs. Alliance says it'll consult with staff until October the 11th before a final decision is made on the 18th.
But there's some good news too this week, with New Zealand signing a free trade deal with the United Arab Emirates. The UAE will eliminate duties on 98.5% of New Zealand's exports immediately, rising to 99% within 3 years. Our main exports there are dairy, red meat and horticulture products, and two-way trades worth $1.3 billion. Here's Executive Director of the New Zealand International Business Forum, Stephen Jacoby.
This is going to have quite an effect. I think, though, the bigger picture around all of this is that exporters, particularly in the agribusiness area, have been having a very difficult time. And this gives them some new opportunities and options to build their overseas connections.
Federated Farmers says the Middle East presents an exciting opportunity for Kiwi exporters as a wealthy and growing market with huge potential.
Fonterra released its full-year financial results this week, and while the profit has fallen from last year's record high, it's still topped the billion-dollar mark at $1.2 billion. Shareholder farmers will get a dividend of 55 cents, the second largest paid since Fonterra was formed. Here's Waikato farmer supplier Matthew Zonderop.
That's a big capital injection for shareholders. It all goes back to clearing debt and starting new. So that's what we want. Farmers are quite pragmatic about how they spend their money, and usually the first thing that is to go is debt. So that's what we want to be able to do, is just clear the decks.
Bay of Plenty dairy farmer Margaret Wright says last season's lower milk price will hurt those just starting out.
Well, I'm sure Fonterra's done their best in a difficult world economic environment. But yeah, for a lot of people, at least it's over $8 for those of us that are fully shared up. But for share milkers and anybody on variable order contracts or anything like that, or, people earlier in their careers, for some it'll be barely break even, I would think.
The good news is things are looking brighter for the current season. Fonterra has lifted the milk price forecast by 50 cents to a new midpoint of $9.
A new study shows cows bred to tolerate more heat may be one option for farmers adapting to a changing climate. It's among findings from the work done by Manaki Whenua Landcare Research, which modelled 4 climate change scenarios through to the end of the century. The models show increased risks of animal illnesses like facial eczema and parasites, droughts affecting pasture and erosion due to storms, especially in the North Island. Take a listen to Principal Scientist Linda Lilburn.
Some cows are more tolerant of heat than others. There's breeding programs to try and improve the tolerance of cows, so they might need to think about changing their breeding stock. It's about thinking about what might happen and being prepared for that, thinking about what are the changes I need to make on my farm that might make me a bit more resilient.
Ms Lilburn says a warming climate will mean suitable areas for crops will move south. For example, Southland could become a good spot to grow maize.
Fish deaths continue to bite into New Zealand king salmon's profits, though it says science and investment will help boost results over time. The company is one of the largest farmed salmon producers, but its half-year profit fell more than 40% on a year ago to $6 million. Harvest volumes were up 12% from its 2 hatcheries in the South Island and 6 salmon farms in the Marlborough Sounds. However, the cost of fish deaths rose 9% to $8.5 million. The firm says lots of money and work is going into climate resiliency, including breeding temperature-resilient salmon. And finally, a company that wants to create a large gold mine in central Otago is hoping to allay locals' fears about the impact on the environment. Santana Minerals has applied for the mine near Bendigo to be considered under the new fast-track approvals bill. It believes the area could hold $4.4 billion worth of gold. But Central Otago Wine Growers Association board member Donald van der Westhuizen says Bendigo is prime vineyard territory with strong organic production. He's worried about the risk of heavy metals, including arsenic, escaping from the site.
Allowing an operation such as what Santana is proposing, you risk already established significant industries within the area, all of which already contribute a significant amount to the local economy, and possibly even more so than the proposed mining operation.
Santana Chief Executive Damien Spring says the company will keep the community updated and is trying to address concerns, especially when it comes to the environment.
Our objective is there'll be no effects. That's how it works today. You have to put up a proposal that you understand your geology, your environment, your hydrology, meteorology, everything. You combine it and you model it up and ensure that whatever water comes down to the monitoring point meets the quality that's required.
And that's the Rural News this week.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
Thanks, Ned. Jurassic Park has always been my favourite movie. Now, to our guest this week. Richard Burke has seen a lot during his 30 years with Leaderbrand. He started working at the coalface of the horticulture business and ended up as chief executive. After 12 years in the top job, he's now preparing to stand down from the role. Janina Schwaneke caught up with him to find out how it all began.
From starting on the ground in the fields to leading one of the country's largest vegetable growing groups, Richard Burke has seen a lot during his 30 years with Leaderbrand. Based in Gisborne, Richard has been chief executive of the horticulture business since 2012, but is now preparing to stand down from the role. I caught up with Richard to learn more about how it all began.
That's an interesting story. I actually was overseas and my sister was getting married, and I came back to New Zealand for her wedding, and I had a girlfriend at the time, a UK girl, and we didn't have enough money to get back, so I called a friend of mine who was working at Leaderbrand and got a job down here driving a sprayer for the summer so I could get enough money to get back to the UK, and here we are almost 32 years later.
And did you come from a farming or horticulture background yourself? Was that something you grew up around?
My parents were sheep and cattle farmers up in Ormond. They're still there, which is, just out of Gisborne. So probably always had a little bit of that in my background and spent a bit of time overseas when I was there in the farming world. So farming was always kind of my thing, I guess. Being outdoors and doing that sort of thing was always kind of in my blood, I suppose. And I certainly enjoyed it. No question, more than I had a little stint in an accountant's office, and that certainly told me that I wasn't really cut out for an office. But I guess in the end things change a bit when you start to get different roles through a company.
And from those different roles, from starting out as a tractor driver to CE, what were some of the big changes that you saw the company go through?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Look, there was huge change, but I always think the big thing is the changes in yourself. You learn so much about yourself with every change the business makes. And I think the business can only change when people change themselves or evolve or you bring new people in. And so for me, it's been about that. That's been the growth and the learning path for me has been quite exciting, is seeing people grow and develop around you, forcing yourself to grow and develop, putting yourself in positions where you're rather uncomfortable. I think you always learn more when you're uncomfortable than when you're comfortable. And I think that's resulted in the business, from where I was when we started to where we are now, it's almost not recognisable. So it's been pretty cool to see it change and to be part of that change as well. So not many people get the opportunity to see a business change as much as I have from the inside.
Have you seen many changes across the sector more generally as well, or?
I think there's, you always see there's these little revolutions that come through, whether it's in technology and varieties or whether it's in, machinery or changes in cropping mix because, one crop's got an opportunity and the other ones haven't. So I think you see these quite a lot, and I think you see the cycles of these. There's been a few cycles of kiwi fruit and a few cycles of grapes and various other things in my time. So I think that's what makes farming really interesting, is that it's never the same and you have to be on your toes and you always have to be looking ahead. So that's probably what keeps people like me in the game.
And you've been with the company a long time. During that time, obviously, you've seen it through some challenges. Most recently, I suppose, Cyclone Gabrielle, and you've been recognised for helping get the company through that. What was that like for you?
Oh, look, I said to the guys the other day, when they asked me what's been the highlights, and I think, I always go to those hard times because it's when you've got your back against the wall that you learn the most about yourself. That's the times, and I think I was always at ease then because you look up and down the wall and there's really good people standing beside you. So for me, I think you've got to just do what's right at the time. You got to focus on people, and that's what we did. So look, it is about the people that you have around you to get you through those times, and I think that's where I've been lucky, is that I've been surrounded by some pretty good people for most of my career here.
Any other career highlights for you?
Oh, look, I'm immensely proud of what we've done here, no question. I think that we've always upheld our values. We've always focused on quality. We've always focused on trying to be good citizens, both in the business world but also in the community. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of. I think we've pulled our weight in that part of the world. And I think in our industry as well that we're reasonably well respected, and you don't get that by doing things or cutting corners or doing anything like that. So for me, it's a business we've been aligned in that, and so I've been really comfortable to drive that. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult, that you don't have to make hard decisions and that you make everyone happy all the time, but I think if you can go to bed at night and be proud, then that's a win.
And obviously with you stepping down, someone else coming in, and it looks like it's going to be a return to the family roots, I suppose, for Liederbrand.
Yeah, and I guess that was always the plan. The boys have been in the business for a little while, and they're both driven, so they want an opportunity to have a crack at it, and now's their times. And Liederbrand's heading into 50 years next year, so it's probably quite apt that there's McPhail's at the helm again. So yeah, look, good luck to them. I hope they do really well and continue things on.
And lastly, do you mind if I ask what's next for you?
That's a really good question. Really good question. At this stage, I just want to tidy this up as well as I can. I haven't thought too much about what's next for me. I'm pretty energetic and pretty excited and pretty keen to get into something else, but I don't know what that is yet. So I'm not sure what my next step is, but I'll be starting to work on that over the next month or so.
Richard Burke speaking to Janina Schwaneke. He finishes up as the Chief Executive of Liederbrand at the end of this year. Richard McPhail, the son of founder Murray McPhail, will become Managing Director of Liederbrand, supported by Gordon McPhail as Executive Director. The group will celebrate its 50th birthday next year.
Now on Country Life, I'm taking you to a vineyard in Te Tai Tokerau, Northland. It's winter, pruning time, at 144 Islands, not far from Kerikeri. And the wine label's founder, Jake Dromgoole, is hard at work.
Pruning is a job we have to do every year. Essentially, grapevines will only produce fruit from last year's growth. And so every year we have to go through the vineyard, chopping out some of the growth from previous years, and then laying down wood from last year, of which the buds will generate new shoots and new bunches of fruit.
Jake's wine label takes its name from the islands scattered in the bay in the distance.
From here you can see the hole in the rock, and we've got a great view from our home here of the Bay of Islands.
And we're up high.
Yeah, we're at around about 290 metres of elevation here, which doesn't sound like a heck of a lot, but it's enough that we escape the humidity of the areas closest to the coast, and we're quite exposed here. So there's no higher landmass from where we are here to Mount Taranaki. So when a southerly blows through, it gets a hell of a lot colder here than it does in the rest of the Bay of Islands. In saying that, when there's no wind blowing, it also gets a lot hotter here. We're in a little bit of a climactic sweet spot as far as grape growing this far north is concerned in New Zealand.
And getting that breeze must help.
Yeah, the breeze keeps disease and our spore load at bay, and just generally makes management easier.
Jake planted his first vines here in 2015, but intriguingly, they're not the first to have grown here. Jake had earlier discovered some very old wild vines on what was part of his parents' farm, climbing over a tumble-down shed. We'll take a look at them later. But coming from a beef and dairy farm, how did his interest in viticulture start?
As a 14 or 15-year-old, the careers counsellor essentially rounded me up and a few other boys like me that were more interested in sort of chasing rugby balls around at lunchtime than actually focusing on class. And in an effort to make sure we stayed in school, they offered us work experience where we could essentially earn school credits. And so I'd said that I was interested in anything to do with agriculture or horticulture. So one day a week, every Friday, I got to take the day off school and go and work at the local winery. And so I guess that's where I got a taste for it. My parents were quite supportive of it, obviously, because I was able to bring bottles of wine home for them. Long story short, I caught the bug, as they say. And
hello, who's this?
That's Bounce. She's come to say hello to us.
Hi, Bounce.
Come here, get down. Come here. So she's called Bounce for a reason.
Yes,
she likes
I
to
can
bounce
tell.
up on you.
Jake tells me he went on to do an economics and marketing degree and worked in the corporate world, but was drawn back to the wine industry 10 years ago, gaining more knowledge working at a local winery, The Landing. His father then stepped in with an idea which would help diversify the family farm.
We milk, depending on the season, anywhere between 450 and 600 cows. Our herd's built primarily around Holstein Friesians on the dairy farm, but we also farm a lot of milking shorthorns and a lot of crosses between the two. And on top of that, we lease a lot of land around the local area and farm beef. My father also has a beef shorthorn breeding business, so we have roughly 150 purebred breeding cows, maybe half of that purebred breeding bulls, and we sell roughly 22 two-year-old breeding bulls every year to customers from Kaitaia to Southland, essentially. So I think that's where my father's passion lies, is in the animal husbandry and the breeding business. And so this vineyard is essentially an extension of that, and a further attempt for us to diversify our broader farming portfolio as a family.
So the soils are suited to grape growing as well. I mean, we're on volcanic soil here.
Yeah, exactly. The soils in Northland are perhaps the oldest soils in New Zealand, with the exclusion of some other areas in the central North Island. It's volcanic soil. It's basaltic in origin. It's very, very free draining. It has a relatively sort of naturally low pH that sits anywhere between 5.2 and 5.6, so a relatively acidic sort of soil profile, and we've got a high concentration of ironstone, manganese oxides, aluminium oxides, and different nodules of different mineral materials like that. While it looks green and fertile here, it's actually, because of the high content of things like iron and manganese and aluminium, it actually has a naturally devigorating effect on the vines, and so we sort of naturally achieve a great balance. So vines aren't too vigorous, nor are they too weak. So we see really seamless, well-integrated tannins in our reds. We tend to achieve beautiful aromaticity in our whites, and the wines, I think, have this beautiful textural quality.
Couple that with a relatively high and consistent average temperature throughout the year, and you get amazing flavour, Jake says.
We achieve flavour ripeness really early, which means we have the benefit of actually a broader picking window where we can sort of, as long as the condition of the fruit is clean and we're able to preserve the integrity of the fruit, we can pick fruit at just about any time during the harvest window and know it's going to taste delicious.
Pruning snips down for the moment, and we head off on a tour of the vineyard.
This is a sort of a one-man band, and you've got many different varieties here. At least 12 I counted, Jake.
Yeah, there's probably more than 12, and some of which we don't actually produce commercially, but it kind of goes back to how we planted the vineyard in a rush. Like most of the things I've done in my life, it tends to be a case of throwing a dart at the wall and drawing a bullseye around it later. We basically had to order what was available to us at the time from the nursery at short notice, and so we basically just took what they had left over at the end of their grafting season. So we planted 6 varieties that year, so Sauvignon, Semillon, Chardonnay, Marsanne, Chenin Blanc, Fiano, some of which had proven themselves around here and I knew would be successful, some of which I was just particularly interested in, some of which were purely just a curiosity, and not all of those have lasted the stretch of time and have magically been grafted over to something that has worked, like Chardonnay.
So what among those lesser known varieties has really worked here?
I mean, among the lesser known varieties that have really been successful, we have Albarino, Petit Manseng among the whites, things like Petit Verdot among the reds tend to just be super resilient. They work really well every year, and I can use them in a broad sort of array of different winemaking applications. Marsanne and Roussanne are also varieties that have worked really well. Marsanne was one of the varieties that I first planted. Just being an amateur history enthusiast, I had read in James Busby's journals that the first wine that was produced in New Zealand was something known as White Hermitage, we know as Marsanne. So yeah, there's a strong likelihood that the first wine actually made in New Zealand was from Marsanne, not too far from us in Waitangi. And so I had essentially wanted to plant Marsanne just to close the loop and to see how it would go. And James Busby must have been onto something, because Marsanne is now probably one of our most successful grapes. I make a wine blended with a couple of other varieties, but it forms the basis of one of my most popular wines, which is named after my daughter, called Mani Manon. And it's just a rich, full-bodied white wine that has a lot of beautiful non-fruit characteristics, and sort of smells like jasmine tea and magnolia flowers and tastes like ginger nut biscuits. And it's something I really enjoy growing, and we're actually planting another 800 Marsanne vines this year. So it's something I'm really sinking my teeth into.
So now we're coming to an interesting part of your story here. How would you describe this? We're on one part of the vineyard which heads down a slope, and this is really the start of your story here, Jake, isn't it?
Essentially, yeah. In the middle of where my house and my sister's cottage is now, there was an old overgrown garden. So from what I've been told, essentially World War I veterans that had returned to New Zealand after they had been in Europe were gifted a small piece of land and a barracks hut to live in. And so there was this garden, we'd always known it was there, but had never really actually taken the time to walk around it. And once we had purchased the place, we took a look around the old workshop and the barracks hut that was in the middle of this property. And what we sort of found was that there were all these ancient fruit trees here as well. So this peach tree here would be more than 100 years old, I'm guessing, and it looks it.
Yeah.
And it still occasionally produces a few peaches, and they're delicious. But what we're looking at here on the ground is a old grapevine, and so if you can imagine this area, we've since cleared out a few trees, but these totara trees that I'm pointing towards here, when we walked around this overgrown garden and were stumbling all over the place, what we found were grapevines growing up these totara trees, and there were grapes sort of hanging from the tops of them.
So they were right up the top there, were they?
Yeah, no, they were overgrowing the top. They were essentially crowding out these totara trees.
Grapes dripping off them in between the totara
essentially, branches. Yeah. A lot of wood pigeons and things like that around here too. So it was a real beautiful sort of secret garden, and it sort of was a little bit of a light bulb moment.
It dawned on them that grapes might just grow well here, and within a month they were ramming in posts and expanding the number of rows every year.
We're now at around about 3.2 hectares of vines here. We're in between this block here to our left is essentially what I call the home block, and this is predominantly all mixed white varieties. The block we're looking at here to our northwest is, like you said, is on a nice northwest sort of facing slope, and this is where I've planted my red varieties. So it's on a slope, it gets a bit hotter, it's a little bit less exposed. I've planted the vines quite a lot more densely than I have here on the home block, and we're actually expanding this block here later this year to sort of fill the rest of this paddock into our distance here. So
you're expanding.
Yeah, so we're going from 3.2 hectares to 6 hectares. So
getting back to that original grapevine, do you know what variety it is?
We have no idea what variety it is.
Have you made any wine from it?
No, but what I suspect it'll be is a lot of the Dalmatians that were growing grapes when they first came to New Zealand were growing grapes with names like Iona and Isabella that weren't proper vinifera wine grape varieties. And if you go to a lot of areas around this location, you find a lot of this Isabella vine. So I expect that this vine might be a Labrusca variety called Isabella. The fruit that it produces has a real hubba bubba sort of, strawberry fruit pop sort of flavour, which is delicious.
Hubba bubba.
Yeah, it doesn't lend itself very well to making wine from, unfortunately, but it is pretty delicious, and the kids will certainly, go foraging here and help themselves to the fruit.
Talking of foraging, Jake likes to go hunting for stuff to add to the fortified wine he's been making over the past year.
It's in hibernation, but other things we've used.
He makes a vermouth flavoured with native tree barks.
Some of those barks actually have really delicious flavours on their own. So we're making an Amaro bitter aperitif using Cody and Rimu. Yet Cody has a really beautiful, viscous sort of flavour that reminds me of the smell of old furniture. But once you combine that with things like molasses, for me it's a delicious smell and flavour. Totra, once toasted and macerated and distilled, has a really strongly licorice / aniseed sort of a flavour. And once you sweeten that as well, it's absolutely beautiful. Carcatia has this very beautiful high tone, like a white floral piney sort of a flavour. And yeah, we use these flavours in varying sort of concentrations and degrees to flavour our red vermouth.
Some people say you've got enough on your plate without branching out into spirits.
They should definitely be listened to. Yeah, I do have enough on my plate.
How much time do you spend on the spirits compared to the wine?
I'm lucky that I have a business partner in the spirit side of the business who takes care of the distilling.
All this plus plans to double the size of the vineyard. And all in the same year Jake was laid very low by a freak accident right at harvest time, breaking his neck and fracturing his skull.
I was very lucky in that given we're a small industry up here, we're very collegial, and so my former workmates at the landing sort of made sure there was a crew here to help me finish harvest. Thankfully, it was a really favourable season, and so there weren't any real weather pressures or anything like that in terms of getting fruit in while I was in hospital. But as soon as I got out of hospital, we had 35 volunteers turn up, and they helped me get the rest of my fruit in. And I'm making my wine at Marsden Estates, and where I'd usually sort of be injecting myself into the winemaking process a bit more, they were able to just take the ball and run with it. They know exactly how I like to do things, and they have taken care of all of that for me. So yeah, really, really fortunate fortunate that there was no permanent damage done, to be sort of walking around without any visible signs of permanent damage at least is something I'm really grateful for. But also the fact that a lot of my former workmates and friends cared enough to make sure that my injury wasn't going to negatively affect me for the coming year. I had a lot of family support in terms of helping me with my 3 children as well, and so, yeah.
Great to have that support.
Yeah, really grateful. And I wish I didn't have to break my neck to get a holiday, but I'm grateful for the rest that I did manage to achieve.
Jake Dromgoole of 144 Islands on his vineyard near Kerikeri. He tells me buds have burst and they're digging a lot of holes at the moment for the next lot of posts to go in. They hope to go from producing 15,000 bottles a year to 40,000. And you can taste some of Jake's wines during Savour Northland, a month-long festival of the food and wine of Te Tai Tokoro, starting next weekend, the 4th of October.
Hi, my name is Des. I live beside the Hurunui River, and you're listening to Country Life on RNZ National.
Now, we're heading to Tauanui Farm in North Canterbury to find out about the big part tourism plays in the family farm. It was raining when Cosmo got there, so first of all he's at the kitchen table with father and son team Mike and Tim Loughnan.
Our farm is in the Blythe Valley, which is just south of Cheviot. We have a traditional sheep and beef farm, and we have a tourism business that runs a glamping site that caters for 8 people, and we're about to open up another one, which is just for 2 people, a wee A-frame, and then we do farm tours, and my son does a commercial jet boat on the Hurunui as well.
And you've got some people from Thailand staying at one of your glamping sites tonight.
They arrived last night from straight from Thailand, from 36 degrees, and they're now up in the campsite and I think they're all right.
It's pretty cold and wet.
It's cold, a bit different, but yeah, I think they're enjoying it. Yeah.
And they'll probably do a farm tour?
Maybe, yes. I think they want to do a farm tour, just it depends on the weather a wee bit. But yes, we still run some farm tours through the winter, so yes.
Now, Mike, how long have you been farming this land?
We've been farming it for the last 30 years. This is my wife Tim's mother's family farm. So Tim here he's 5th generation on the farm. We came here 30 years ago. We were farming over in Waia, and I'm originally from the Scargill Valley, so North Canterbury, born and bred. Yep.
And your wife Elspeth's great-great-grandfather was one of the early settlers in the district.
Yes, the Cheviot Hills estate was broken up in the 1890s sometime and balloted, and they were one of the original families that got a ballot farm on the side of the river back then, and it's still in the family's hands, yeah.
Yes. How big is the farm?
We're 320 hectares, which is quite small. But yeah, that's the main reason we've ventured into tourism, basically, to diversify.
Do you want to pass that over to Tim? Thank you, Mike. Tim, what were you doing before you came back to the farm?
I went to Lincoln, went overseas to do a bit of working as well in Australia. Went and played rugby in the UK as a part of sort of a travelling holiday, I guess. Then I came back and worked for a fertiliser company for a year, and then probably been back to the farm since then. It's probably 10 or so years, maybe.
And Mike, on a farm of this size, it's hard to have 2 families living off the land.
Yes, it's only a one-person farm really now. So in order for Tim or someone to stay at home, we need to generate some income from somewhere else. As we know, farm income is a bit up and down, so it's basically to give us a bit more sustainability as well in our income.
When you're not farming, what hobbies and interests do you have?
Rugby and jet boating, probably the main 2. I've coached rugby for Glenmark for years, and Tim's carried on doing that as well, coached and played there, and still have a passion for that. And that's why we started the jet boat, commercial jet boat, because we used to spend a lot of time in the summer on the rivers boating and barbecuing, and Tim came home and he got the bit between his teeth and decided that we needed to do something about it. So, yeah.
So, Tim, you started taking people jet boating on the Hurunui River.
Yeah. So like Dad said, it's definitely a passion. I've learnt off him, and luckily we're only 5 minutes from the river, so we had that on our doorstep. So nice and handy. And yeah, it's gaining some traction now, which is great, but it has taken its time. But yeah, we sort of knew that was going to be the case. There's a lot of competition in New Zealand, obviously being the home of jet boating. But yeah, it was really the passion that sort of drove me to keep doing it, really.
Yes, we will go and have a quick look at your jet boat a bit later on. But how did you get started? I guess you had to buy the boat first. That would have been quite an expense.
Yep, it's quite a huge investment in capital to sort of get up and running. So I got lucky. For a start, we managed to pick up an older second-hand boat, which sort of got me off the ground, if you like. But yeah, obviously plenty of licensing and health and safety is probably the main concern with this type of thing, so we get heavily audited like all the other jet boat operators throughout the country. And then we managed to get going with the old boat for a couple of years, and then 2 years ago we've upgraded to a bigger one, and that'll probably see me out, really, yeah.
Are you the only jet boating operator on the river?
On the river, on the Hurunui, we're the only one on the river, probably because the other rivers have got centres, tourism centres near them or towns. Generally that's where people will go to first, but obviously with our farm next to the river down here,
you saw the potential.
Saw the potential, but like I said, it's taken its time. And the jet boating's only one part of the operation, so as a business on its own, it would probably be a bit difficult to do. But because we've had the farm to fall back on, or the accommodation, we've sort of managed to get it going. And yeah, it's quite a nice little side business to the rest of the operation.
How far up the river can you go?
We've got consent to go a long way, probably about 100 kilometres, but we sort of stick to two points of access. So our farm's located down towards the mouth of the river here. So there's a swing bridge down by the mouth, so we either go down here or up at State Highway 1, the one-lane bridge.
Oh, is that where people would get into the boat?
Yep, so above State Highway 1 heads into the gorge there, so amazing scenery, and then the lower section, it's a bit more spread out, so the boating's quite exciting over the braids, but then we're also very lucky we've got access right down to the ocean as well, which is pretty unique from a commercial perspective. There's not many operators that can start on the river and head right down to the coast, so that's an exciting jet boating river just naturally, so you don't have to try too hard to give people a thrill. It's been a small river, so it's quite fun.
And Mike was saying just before that you can go all the way up the Hurunui River to Lake Sumner.
You can if you're game enough.
Which is what, 180 kilometres?
Around that, yeah. So obviously, like all the rivers, you get closer up into the mountains there, they get steeper, and big rocks, big can openers around that you've got to be careful of. So, it's pretty, you can sink your boat pretty easy. It's dangerous.
Yes, and even though it's been raining over the past few days, river levels are still pretty low, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been a reflection on the season, really. Obviously been very dry for all of the rivers on the east coast of the South Island. Just haven't had the rainfall. It's been pretty incredible, really. We're just even the nor'west floods, we haven't had any of them. So the river's been low, but obviously it's raining at the moment, so we'll see what happens.
Mike, talking about the dry conditions, you have a dryland farm here, don't you?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we haven't got access to irrigation.
So how have you coped with the conditions this year?
We only trade stock, so we only fatten lambs or cattle, so I've just destocked basically. So you can either, a lot of people have bought a lot of feed in, you can either do that or you can destock or graze out. So we've chosen to destock.
And normally you wouldn't have to do that?
No. We're probably about 2,500 stock units here normally, and we would be 800 or 900 stock units down on what we normally are.
Gosh, well down.
Yes, well down.
Because you don't have enough feed?
No, just don't have enough feed. We decided we'd use what we could to get through, and we're just going to get through, I think.
So financially, I guess it's been a tough year in terms of farming?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because of the dry. We're a wee bit better off on the coast here than they are further inland, but yes, it's been challenging. Yep.
Yes. Do you still have that passion for farming? Do you still love it after all these years?
It's waned a bit. It's not just the dry, it's the product prices, and this year's probably seen us go back quite a long way in terms of lamb prices, more than cattle. So yeah, it's been challenging, and as you get older, you just seem to lose a wee bit of enthusiasm for it. And I must say that the tourism has given me another interest in the farming, and having Tim home has helped, so we're in it together. But I don't have the same desire to get up in the morning and go and dag sheep or anything, no.
So you're involved in the agri-tourism operations?
Yep, we're all equally involved in it all. I don't drive the jet boat now, I've got a licence, but Tim does that. But otherwise we're equally involved in everything we do.
Yes. Do you enjoy doing the farm tours?
Yeah, I do actually. Yes, I do.
Sharing your knowledge?
Yes, I do actually, yep. Farmers can tend to get a wee bit insular in what they do, and it's good to meet new people all the time. And we're now doing bus tours as well, so they're mostly young overseas people, so we get a mixture. We get some out of the glamping site, which would be Kiwis. We get probably this year we've noticed more overseas people coming through than we have done, obviously since COVID, so it's a mixture of both really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it quite tricky sharing the revenue from all these different operations? How does it work?
We run it all as one company. So farming and tourism all comes into one company, and then we pay ourselves a wage out of it. And so even if we do outside, like Tim does work next door, that all comes into the company and we pay a wage out. And so we're equal shares in that company.
So it simplifies everything in terms of paperwork and management.
Yes.
What about farm succession? Do you have a plan?
We've still got the succession thing to work out because we have two. I've got a daughter and a son, both overseas, working overseas. So at some stage we've done a lot of talking about it, but we still haven't got a plan yet about how the succession works, which is an issue with farming. But the key is we're all talking about it and all on board, so yeah.
Now it looks like there's a break in the rain, Tim, so how about we head down to the farmyard and check out your boat?
Yeah.
Good to see you. Hello.
So in one of the sheds here is where Tim stores his jet boat, which he's uncovering now.
Yeah, it's almost 6 metres long, I think, and so yeah, 12 seats and single engine.
And you don't only use this jet boat for taking tourists up the river, you also work with the Department of Conservation?
Yeah, so we can, majority of the work is for tours, but we do quite a lot of contract work on the Hurunui and the Waia River. Yeah, with DOC, they sort of do a bird count, so they actually walk the length of the riverbed in sections, so there could be 8 of them and you're just pretty much ferrying them to the islands. They've just got to get a count of the birds, and then the other one we do is sort of nasella grubbing out of the riverbeds. So we can take the seats out, so they're just climbing over the bare frame of the seat. So it's quite hard on the boat because you're sort of up on the bank and they're climbing over it with the boots and stuff. But it's a work machine, so that's what it's for. But I'm lucky because it's a passion. It's not really a job for me. It's just something I love doing.
As we've mentioned, it is a big jet boat. How shallow can you go in a boat like this?
The river got down to 14 cumecs over the summer, and we were sort of bouncing over a little shelf, so it was safe, but we were hitting the ground. But when it's planing, it doesn't need bugger all really, sort of 6 inches of water. It's when you do your 360s, your spins, that's when it sinks right into the water. So you generally do that in your big pools that are probably over 1 metre deep.
And what advice would you give to other people who are thinking about starting up a business in a rural area? Because I guess you must have come across a few different challenges along the way.
100%, and I guess it's all specific to your location or what you want to do or your passion or whatever. So the biggest thing is just making sure it can fit in well. It's not taxing. I run everything out of the truck here, so it's all easy. Probably only need an hour's warning to get the boat in the water kind of thing. Obviously if you're shearing or something like that you can't, but if you're just fencing or something, you can chuck the boat in. So yeah, I think finding your passion but then fitting it to how you want to fit it in, and then if your drive is big enough, nothing will stop you really. There's always red tape and paperwork and that kind of thing, but if you're keen enough, you'll find a way through it.
Anything's possible if you've got that desire.
100%. Yeah, we weren't in this industry when we started, so I had no idea how to. I knew from Dad about how a business should function, but in terms of tourism and growing stuff, it's without help it would have been impossible really. So
have you had some additional business support along the way?
We work closely with Hurunui Tourism. They've been fantastic. Enterprise North Canterbury, there's plenty of resources there from them, so they want people to get into business and they're so happy to.
So there's help out there.
There's funding, there's all sorts of stuff depending on what you do, so there is help there.
Mm-hmm. Well, shall we head up to one of your glamping sites where you have a couple of people from Thailand staying and see how they're coping, because it's cold and it's just started to rain.
Oh yeah, it's miserable, but I think they've had a good night by the sounds of it. There's heating and all that up there, but so yeah, no, they should be right.
Hello. Yes, you're lovely, huh?
Yeah, they all get jealous.
We've come up to one of the high points on your farm, and this is where you've got 2 geodesic glamping domes.
Yes.
How would you describe the scenery that we can see around us?
So it's probably the best view on the farm, really. We overlook the Hurunui River.
We can see it down there in the distance.
Normally you can look up and see the inland Kaikoura mountain ranges up in the clouds, and then you're looking left, sort of you can see Pendle Hill down the Blythe Valley there.
Doing this makes good use of this scenic part of the farm.
Yep, it's just a sort of a knob in the paddock, and got the digger in here and put a few little sites in, and we were lucky we already had good track access up here, good water. It's all off-grid.
And in between the domes you've got a kitchen area.
Yep, so we've got a living kitchen area in the middle. We've got sort of canvas sides on the structure there, so you can all fold them up when it's nice. And then either side of that, we've got the 2 domes. So there's a hot tub stuck in there, composting toilets. But when you book, you get the whole site to yourself. So if we've got 2 people here, they've got the whole place.
And behind the domes, there's a windbreak of trees, and in front there's a paddock. Do you have sheep grazing in here sometimes?
We do. We need to fence this off, actually, the track off. We normally just take hay off this one, just with the amount of traffic going in and out of here. But yeah, we do need to graze it a bit better.
It is a very isolated and peaceful spot.
That's right, yeah. And
for people who want to get away from the day-to-day grind of life.
Yeah, but it is rustic. Good morning. How are you?
Oh my gosh, it's so cold. Hi.
Last week is
shock to the system.
How warm was it in Thailand when you left?
31, 32 degrees, something like. It's not warm, it's hot.
Well, that's very adventurous of you to come and spend a night here on the farm.
Yeah, he loves it.
You've got your son here. How old are you?
I'm 14. It's pretty cool because we're basically alone in the whole place.
There is no one else here for kilometres.
Yeah.
And how long are you staying in New Zealand for?
Around 20 days.
Well, enjoy your trip, and hopefully you'll get some sunnier weather soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great meeting the guests and where they've come from.
And you'd meet people from all over the world.
All over, yeah, which is awesome. And some people don't really want to talk to you, and you just show them around and bugger off. But some of them will just yarn to you for ages and offer you a beer and whatnot. So it's cool. It does revitalise you, really.
Now we've come to another site on your farm. Tell me about this A-frame building that you've just about completed.
Yeah, so this has been our latest project, I guess, for the last year. So, yeah, it was just obviously a beer paddock you can see in front of us. It was a big shelter out there, so you had no view, so we took all the trees out, put the side in, and then we've built this A-frame.
It's about, 7 metres high?
It's big, yeah. It's got a mezzanine floor bedroom in it, so that's why it's so tall. Tricky to build.
Another lovely view of the Hurunui River in the distance there, weaving its way down to the sea.
Yep. We wanted something, I guess, a bit more high-end, and we've got 2 ends of the spectrum covered now, I guess, with the 2 sites, but it has been an undertaking.
And we can see some sheep in the paddock across the way there. Are they your sheep?
They're actually the neighbours, but yeah, all around here we've fenced this off, so we'll graze sheep, cattle right up to the A-frame.
And Tim, the farm here is called Tawanui. Where does the name come from?
I'm pretty sure it means big tree in Maori. I'm not sure who came up with it. It was before my time, but sort of what we've based our branding off. And so, yeah, it all sort of works in quite well, and something a little bit different. So Tawanui Farm glamping and Tawanui Farm A-frame cabin, I guess. So,
do you have Maori heritage?
Yes, I do. Yep. I'm Ngāi Tahu on my mum's side. So, yeah, we try and incorporate a little bit of that onto the farm tours and on the jet boating, mainly through storytelling. You know, the Māori history around here for fishing and gathering, moa hunting, that kind of thing. So there are some cool stories that we incorporate into the tours, and that's the connection. It's the connection piece that we sort of talk about, and for me that's to the awa, the river and the land, and that's, I guess, the passion that gets shown when we show people around.
Sounds like there's some trees being taken down.
Oh yeah, that's
nearby.
Another part of the diversity as well in the farm. So we've got a lot of forest plantations as well as shelter belts and a bit of native bush and stuff as well. So they're into it. It's actually my uncle's logging gang, so they're there at the moment.
Don't think there'll be any trucks going out today because with the weather, but yeah, they're chopping trees down.
And what's on your agenda for the rest of the day? Have you got farm work to do?
Bit cold, I might go and do some office work actually, I don't know. I was just catching up on some jet boating paperwork for now, but I still do a bit of work for the neighbour as well in the quiet time, especially around winter. So a few culverts that need clearing with the rain, so I was going to go and do that this afternoon. So yeah, try not to get too cold and wet today is probably the main thing.
That was farmer and glamping and jet boat operator Tim Lufton. Cosmo was also talking to Tim's dad Mike at Tawanui Farm near Cheviot in North Canterbury.
And that's it for this episode of Country Life. Do let us know your feedback by emailing country@rnz.co.nz.
Click follow on your app if you don't want to miss an episode of Country Life. And if you enjoyed the podcast, we'd love you to give us a plug on social media or tell a friend about this show. Click the share button in this app to send this episode to a friend.
The stories in this episode were produced and presented by Janina Schwanecker, me, Sally Round, and Cosmo Kentish Barnes. In the studio production team today, David Knowles and William Saunders.
We'll catch you next time.
Ka kite.